Joining us now, Harris Wall's campaign surrogate, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine. Good to have you back, Senator.
Shannon, thanks.
And you know what it's like to run this gauntlet
Yes.
of the campaign, having done it yourself as vice presidential candidate in 2016. Before we get to politics, though, I want to get your reaction to the news of the loss of Hersh Goldberg Poland. I know he spent some of his childhood in Richmond and has family there, too.
It's a real tragedy. I've met his parents, and they have been tireless in coming to the Hill and talking about their son, but talking about the need to find the hostage release deal. So I can only imagine how painful this news is to them. I really feel for them today. And it just emphasizes even more, we've got to get this hostage release and ceasefire deal. The two halves have to come together. You're not going to see one without the other. It's been tantalizingly close. We're not there yet. But hopefully the tragedy will even put more of a sense of urgency in our efforts.
Do you worry that it may drive things the other way? You've got Prime Minister Netanyahu saying out there this morning that they have put forth aggressive, what he calls proposals, and that Hamas has rejected them again and again. And while they were in talks, now executes these 6. He says if you're murdering hostages, you don't want a deal.
That could be. I mean, we've certainly wondered along the way whether Hamas wants a deal or not. They don't care about the suffering of the Palestinian people. By the same token, there's also reports of internal dissension between the Prime Minister and his chief defense officials about the Israeli position. So my sense is this is very, very tough. We're getting closer. You know, again, let's step back and reflect on the tragedy of the loss of these 6 and see if we can really push through to a solution that would involve not just hostage release and ceasefire, but obviously the humanitarian need with polio cases now being seen in Gaza. We've got a lot to do on the humanitarian front, too.
We absolutely do. Okay, so let's talk politics. We got our first sit-down interview from the vice president this week, along with her running mate, Governor Walz. A lot of folks, they'll think we didn't get the detail, the level of detail that they think the American people deserve before they go vote for their commander-in-chief. Bret Stephens, writing over at the New York Times, she was vague to the point of vacuous. She struggled to give straight answers to her shifting positions on fracking and border security, other than to say, my values have not changed. The interview also didn't answer the question of why she reversed her former positions or whether she has higher values other than political expediency. So we're just a few days out from people beginning early voting. Last I checked, KamalaHarris.com still does not have the details or any policy prescriptions there. Is the idea to ride this out on vibes? Because they've been good. The momentum has been good for the ticket.
I think vibes and accomplishments. I remember that first interview that I did with Hillary Clinton. We did it, right after the convention or maybe the day before the convention, and it was similar. You can't get into everything in a short interview. In that case, was 60 minutes. But look, on fracking, let's use that as an example. She took a position in a presidential debate in 2019, but now she's been part of an administration that has rocketed ahead with alternative energy investments because of the Inflation Reduction Act, but has also used the production of natural gas to backstop our allies who are trying to wean themselves away from relying on Russia. America is the largest exporter of LNG in the world under the Biden-Harris administration. Fracking is one of the reasons for it, and we're helping our allies, especially in Europe, not have to rely on Russia. Campaigning is one thing, governing is another, and what governing has shown with Vice President Harris is she's going to try to bring the team together and make something happen. And that team includes the administration, it includes Congress, it includes governors, it includes the private sector.
It did seem that fracking was where we got the most level of detail for her about her evolution on the issue. But one of the places we really didn't get as much of an explanation was the border. Bret Stephens goes on to write in that same New York Times piece, he says she evaded the question of why it took the Biden administration more than 3 years to gain better control of the border, which it ultimately did through an executive order that he says could have been in place years earlier. So you can evolve, but I think people want more of an explanation. Here is a little then and now, the vice president on the border.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross the border as criminals.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross a border without documentation. Can we keep the hands up so we can see them?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally.
Okay, so not treating it as a criminal offense. Now that's very different language from her. They've got to be held accountable. There are laws broken. Do you know how she evolved to that position?
Well, I've watched it in real time from Congress. The Biden-Harris administration has removed more people from the United States, about 4.4 million, than any administration except the second George W. Bush administration, which came in at about 5 million. So the actual practice, and especially beginning with executive orders in May of 2023, has been create some positive paths where people can come in, but when they come in the wrong way, they're being removed. And that's been going on for the last year and a half. You really see the numbers improving now. The right answer, of course, is for Congress to finally engage in immigration reform. And Kamala Harris was very involved in the negotiation of a very tough border security deal with Republicans in late 23 and early 24. Donald Trump told Republicans, don't vote against this. We don't want to fix the problem. We want to complain about the problem.
Let's talk about pre and post that, because those are two different issues. But the fact is there were record high numbers. Critics will easily point to and say millions of people have entered during the first 3.5 years, even if you want to talk about the improvement the last few months, of this administration because of their policies. Our polling shows people put the blame at the Biden-Harris administration. I think it's north of 70% say it's the lack of enforcing current laws that led us to where we are.
Well, again, I have a little bit of a different perspective. First, the Biden administration began putting executive orders in place in May of 2023 that have seen the numbers come down. And then they did more after Republicans bailed on the bipartisan proposal in the spring of this year. And again, when you see those numbers on deportations and removals, those don't lie. I wish Republicans would quit repeating over and over again that borders are open, because when they do that, they make the problem worse by encouraging people to come.
People think they're open. I mean, they feel magnets pulling them here.
4.4 million people being deported. I mean, that's not open.
If you've got 7, 8, maybe north of that, we don't know about all the gotaways, millions of people who say they're coming here because they do believe the border is open.
And every time Donald Trump says the borders are open, that message goes loud and clear. Cartels get people to pay them thousands of dollars to bring them to the United States.
But do you not think that the policies of this administration, work permits, free housing, free health care, in some places free tuition, does that not serve as a powerful magnet to make people believe they come here and things are going to be certainly much better than
Shannon, here's what I think. I was a missionary in Honduras in 1980 and 81. I think I know why people come here. They come here because they believe there's opportunity in this country, and they're so tired of violence and corruption and lack of opportunity in their own. They come here for the same reason my 8 great-grandparents came here from Ireland in the 1860s. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have rules, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't enforce them. I like what the Biden-Harris administration has done with respect to not allowing people to cross the border between ports of entry and then claim refugee or asylum status if they are picked up. You need to get an appointment. You need to go to a port of entry. You need to wait your turn. You may or may not be allowed in if you meet the standard or don't. Putting that kind of order in place is important, and that's what the administration has done. But again, Congress really bears the lion's share of responsibility. And this 3 times since I've been in the Senate, we've done bipartisan border security deals, and Republicans have killed it each of the 3 times.
Well, and also, though, if you look back to her time as a senator, there was a point at which then Senator Harris, Vice President now, she tried to stop deals that were coming through. A letter that she sent to Senate appropriators, Democrats and Republicans, urged them to stop one. She said in 2018, April, we ask you to reject President Trump's fiscal year funding for a border wall, new Border Patrol agents, and a large increase in U.S. immigration and customs enforcement personnel and detention beds. That was a funding request, but some of the same things she says are imperative for fixing things now, she was against when there was a Republican president.
I remember that part of 2018 very well, because we did a bipartisan deal in the Senate that gave Donald Trump every bit of his $25 billion and also protected Dreamers, which he said he wanted to do. As soon as we put that bill on the table, he did a 180 and killed it. That's what I remember about 2018. Donald Trump talking a big game, but when we tried to do $25 billion in border security, he told his
But he was
Republicans.
president then. Why wouldn't he want it solved? I can understand your argument now that he wants it as a campaign issue.
At the time, he didn't want it solved because he decided to backtrack on his support for Dreamers. He had said over and over again, Dreamers are good people. We should have a solution for Dreamers. So Lindsey Graham and Mike Rounds and Angus King and I, we presented a proposal that was, Mr. Trump, can you take yes for an answer? $25 billion in border security, protect Dreamers. As soon as we put the deal on the table with bipartisan support, he did a 180, just like he did earlier this year when he told the Republicans to vote against the tough border deal.
You know that there were a number of your colleagues who were going to vote against it anyway. They think that this bill has way too much amnesty and other issues that they said they could not vote for, regardless of how President Trump
You're talking about the 2024 bill.
Yes.
Yeah, but look, that bill was negotiated by one of the most conservative members of the Senate, James Lankford, who is a real expert on border issues. At every point along the way, he went to his colleagues and said, we've negotiated this point. Is this okay or isn't it? But Donald Trump was very plain. He said, don't vote against this because we want to complain about the problem, not fix the problem. And his repetition again and again that there's open borders at the same time as we're deporting millions of people makes the problem worse. Let's join hands and fix the problem.
People feel the policies speak for themselves. In the meantime, I want to show this. This is a video from suburban Denver. This is Aurora, Colorado, where DHS confirms these guys at this apartment complex going around and apparently, terrorizing people with guns. They are members of a Venezuelan gang believed to be in this country illegally. A city council member there said she helped people move out of that complex and that there are multiple others there in Aurora.
Yep.
That this is a direct result of people flooding across the border with complete lack of accountability. I mean, no American thinks that this is okay.
No, and I don't think it's okay either. In 2013, we did a bill, $45 billion in border security, bipartisan in the Senate. House Republicans killed it. 2018, $25 billion in border security. Donald Trump killed it, and he killed the deal in February. If we had done that bipartisan bill in 2013, you wouldn't see problems like this being so severe. Every time we put a package on the table that's bipartisan, Kamala worked on the deal with Senator Langford and others. We put a package on the deal.
He said she didn't show up. He said she was no part of negotiating that
Well,
deal.
she might not have been a negotiator in the room.
Staff,
but
he says that they were not part of it.
She has said she will sign this bill as president when it gets to her desk, a tough deal negotiated with Republicans, and she'll sign it.
Well, as Langford says, it does include the border wall. And so if she said that she's going to sign it, okay, so now for the border wall. All right, Senator, always good to have you in.
Thank
you so much for coming
by.
Glad to.